You wake up at 5 a.m. because some productivity guru said that's when winners start. You journal, you meditate, you batch your emails, you time block your calendar down to 15-minute chunks. You optimize your morning routine, track your habits, measure your outputs. And yet by noon, you're scrolling. By 3 p.m., you're stuck. By 6 p.m., you're wondering why nothing actually got done. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Productivity advice doesn't fail stupid people. It fails smart people. And science can prove exactly why. This is documented in labs, in journals, in studies tracking thousands of workers across decades. And what they found flips everything you've been told on its head. Psychological science and current opinion in psychology, detailed meta-analyses from institutions like the National Bureau of Economic Research, tracking 25,000 workers across Denmark in late 2023, and comprehensive reviews published in California Management Review in October 2025, examining 7 major myths about AI and productivity backed by systematic literature reviews. Now back to the information. 1987. Economist Robert Solow notices something strange. Personal computers are everywhere. Companies are spending billions on technology. Workers have more tools than ever before. And productivity growth, it's falling. He writes one sentence that becomes famous. You can see the computer age everywhere, but in the productivity statistics, they call it the Solow paradox. Fast forward to 2025. Same story, different technology. Companies pour money into AI tools. Workers adopt chatbots. Teams implement automation. McKinsey surveys nearly 8 in 10 companies using generative AI, and nearly 8 in 10 report no significant bottom-line impact. The AI productivity paradox. But here's what nobody connects. The paradox isn't about the tools, it's about the people using them. Over 10,000 engineers across 1,255 teams. They give them AI coding assistants. The developers write more code, they complete more tasks, they work faster on paper. But company productivity? It doesn't budge. The code gets bigger, the code gets buggier, the bottleneck shifts to review. More output doesn't mean more value. And the smartest developers, they're the ones hitting the wall hardest. Because intelligence creates a specific kind of trap. Give the wrong tool to the wrong person and productivity collapses. But here's the twist. The smartest workers assume they can master any tool. They pile on more systems. They layer complexity. They optimize the optimization. And they drown. When you're productive, your prefrontal cortex lights up. That's the part handling planning, decision-making, goal-directed behavior. Sounds good? Except your prefrontal cortex has limits. Research published in Biological Psychiatry in 2011 by Cools and Esposito shows dopamine follows an inverted U-shape. Too little, you're unmotivated. Too much, you're scattered. And the more intelligent you are, the more you try to force yourself into the optimal zone using willpower alone. That's where it breaks. Study after study confirmed this in the early 2000s. But then something interesting happened. The replication crisis hit psychology. Researchers tried to reproduce ego depletion effects. Some studies replicated, others didn't. A 2024 meta-analysis published in Current Opinion in Psychology by Baumeister and colleagues refined the theory. It's not just resource exhaustion, it's conservation and motivation. Job and colleagues published research in 2010 in Psychological Science that changed everything. They tested people's beliefs about willpower. Some people believe willpower is limited. Use it up and it's gone. Other people believe willpower is unlimited. You can sustain it with effort and purpose. They ran experiments. Depleting tasks followed by demanding tasks. People who believed willpower was limited showed classic depletion effects. Their performance crashed. People who believed willpower was unlimited, they sustained performance. The belief shaped the reality. But here's the problem. Smart people read this research. They think, I'll just believe willpower is unlimited. Except beliefs don't work like light switches. And even unlimited belief participants hit walls eventually. A study published in March 2025 in Peak Human Performance Journal showed that extreme demands break everyone. Even with the right mindset, intense cognitive exertion accumulates metabolites like adenosine in the brain. That's a building block of DNA that inhibits further effort. Your brain physically forces rest. Each system has research backing it. Each system works for someone somewhere. But intelligence lets you see the logic in all of them, and that's the trap. You don't pick one system, you try to combine them all, you create a Frankenstein productivity monster, and the mental overhead of managing your productivity system becomes more expensive than just doing the work. Barry Schwartz published The Paradox of Choice in 2004. His thesis? More options make us less satisfied. More options make decisions harder. More options create regret. He distinguished 2 types of people: maximizers, who hunt for the perfect solution; satisficers, who settle for good enough. Maximizers research endlessly. They compare every option. They become temporary experts in dishwashers, smartphones, ground paprika, anything they need to buy. And maximizers suffer more. They experience more regret. They're haunted by missed opportunities. Every choice carries the weight of every unchosen alternative. A study published in 2024 by researchers at University of Chicago and Michigan State University tracked working memory and performance under pressure. High-pressure situations, like overthinking a decision, reduce performance on cognitively challenging tasks. Anxiety eats your working memory. Working memory is your brain's RAM. Once it's full, you crash. Smart people can hold more in working memory, but they also generate more to hold. More considerations, more contingencies, more what-ifs. The advantage becomes a disadvantage. The judges experienced decision fatigue. Each decision depletes the same mental resource. By the end of the day, the default answer becomes no. Preserve energy. Avoid risk. Make no decision rather than a potentially wrong decision. A meta-analysis published in California Management Review in October 2025 examined 7 myths about AI and productivity. One key finding? While AI can accelerate individual work, meta-analytic evidence finds no robust relationship between AI adoption and aggregate productivity gains. Individual speed doesn't translate to organizational output. Why? Because decision-making is the bottleneck. Faster tools mean more decisions to make. More decisions mean more fatigue. More fatigue means worse decisions. The cycle feeds itself. 90-minute sprints followed by rest. But most people ignore these rhythms. They push through. Caffeine and willpower. The result? Decision fatigue, mental fog, burnout, less effectiveness. Smart people especially ignore these signals because they can push further. They have more cognitive reserves, so they drain those reserves completely and then wonder why they crash harder. Einstein played violin when he got stuck on problems. Winston Churchill took afternoon naps during wartime. Steve Jobs took long walks to stimulate creativity. They weren't slacking. They were activating the default mode network. Research published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015 by Fox and colleagues showed the default mode network boosts problem solving and innovation. It's the brain network active during rest and mind wandering. It makes connections between disparate ideas. It processes information subconsciously. You need downtime for breakthroughs, but productivity advice tells you to eliminate downtime. Pack every hour, maximize output, no gaps, no slack, constant engagement. A Wall Street Journal report in 2025 detailed a company that adopted aggressive AI tools. The CEO observed a 20% productivity gain on paper, but his 14-person team hit a wall of exhaustion. They eliminated busy work, which meant every minute was difficult, draining, high-intensity problem solving. No time to coast. The mental toll was immediate. Research by Baird and colleagues suggests great ideas rarely arrive during focused work. They ambush you during low-engagement activities, folding laundry, driving on an empty highway, walking the dog. The subconscious requires a specific state to connect dots. Repetitive low-intensity tasks put the brain on autopilot. That's when insights emerge. Every task must be high value. Every minute must matter. A study published in Behavioral Sciences indicates workers tolerate automation only until it replaces tasks that give them identity and control. This creates core task characteristic substitution. Workers feel powerless. Automation handles the easy stuff. Humans get stuck with the hard stuff all day, every day. No mental breaks. Cognitive batteries drain faster than they recharge. The AI productivity paradox becomes a human burnout paradox. They're not wrong. Those factors matter. But considering all of them creates paralysis. The simpler approach would work better, but it feels intellectually unsatisfying. People with lower cognitive ability develop higher conscientiousness out of necessity. They need discipline to compete. People with higher cognitive ability find tasks comparatively easy. They don't need to develop conscientiousness. They coast on raw ability until they hit tasks that require sustained effort despite boredom. Then they crash. They never built the discipline muscle. High cognitive ability acts as a buffer against natural behavioral dispositions. Smart introverts can suppress introversion when needed. Smart people with low conscientiousness can force themselves to focus, but this buffering costs energy. Constantly overriding natural tendencies depletes resources faster. You're not just doing the work, you're also managing your own brain's resistance to the work. Double the effort, half the sustainability. Third, smart people experience heightened existential awareness. Research published in Very Big Brain in July 2025 examined what they call the genius paradox. High intelligence brings sensitivity to life's bigger questions: purpose, meaning, mortality, suffering. This creates existential dread. And while most people can push these thoughts aside and focus on daily tasks, highly intelligent people wrestle with them constantly. A background process eating CPU cycles. This reduces available mental resources for actual productivity. You're trying to optimize your calendar while simultaneously questioning whether anything matters. That's a cognitive load multiplier. They sabotage progress with preventable mistakes, not from lack of ability, from the very traits that made them successful. Speed of thought becomes overconfidence. High standards become paralysis. Intelligence barrier breeds the belief that sustained effort is optional. Early success came easy, so they never learned persistence through difficulty. When tasks require grinding through uncertainty, they quit. They've never had to. Psychology. Today published research in October 2025 examining why traditional productivity advice fails people with ADHD. But the pattern applies to intelligent people too. Standard productivity systems assume success depends on repetition, consistency, ability to complete long-term tasks without immediate reinforcement. These assumptions don't hold up for everyone. Research shows people with higher ADHD symptoms respond more to reward-based feedback than punishment. They perform better with immediate rewards. Tasks without quick wins or visible progress feel daunting. Color-coded planners become graveyards of unfinished to-dos. Early morning routines collapse within days. Time blocking fails when monotony or time estimation challenges arise. But intelligence does correlate with need for intellectual stimulation. Smart people get bored easily. Routine tasks feel like torture. Productivity systems require routine, do the same thing every day, build habits, eliminate decision-making. Smart people implement this advice, and they hate it. The system fights their nature. They either abandon it or white-knuckle through it until they burn out. Neither outcome is productive. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology in June 2023 examined whether willpower mindset moderates ego depletion. They tried to replicate the job study from 2010. The replication failed. Multiple studies have tried. Results are inconsistent. The moderation effect isn't robust. What does this mean? Believing in unlimited willpower helps sometimes, but it's not a solution. The underlying phenomenon is real. Depletion happens. Mindset can buffer it temporarily, but you can't think your way out of biology, and smart people try to think their way out of everything. Perfectionism creates paralyzed cognition and action. Fear of failure prevents starting until conditions are perfect. Fixed mindset makes failure seem like evidence of inadequacy rather than learning opportunity. Overthinking leads to endless planning phase without execution. Researching the perfect diet, perfect exercise routine, perfect project proposal without putting anything into practice. You're thinking deeply about the problem. You're analyzing variables. You're considering approaches. It feels productive. Your brain is working. But nothing in the external world changes. No actual work gets done. This is especially insidious because smart people can construct elaborate justifications for why they're not starting yet. The research isn't complete. The approach isn't optimized. The timing isn't right. The conditions aren't ideal. All technically true. Also, all forms of procrastination disguised as wisdom. But AI-augmented code is getting bigger and buggier. The bottleneck shifts to review. More doesn't equal better. This mirrors what happens when smart people adopt productivity advice. They do more tasks, check more boxes, fill more time, but actual value created? Often unchanged or decreased, because intelligence lets them confuse activity with achievement. Research from newsgazette.com, published in January 2025, examined analysis paralysis in retirement planning. Financial advisors noticed a pattern over 4 decades. The smartest people are often the slowest to move. They read everything. They worry about every angle. They want to ensure no mistakes. From outside, it looks responsible. From inside, it feels productive. But it becomes paralysis. Overthinking disguises itself as wisdom. Intelligence makes you better at generating reasons not to act. Every course of action has risks. Every decision has downsides. Smart people see all of them clearly, so they wait for certainty. But certainty never comes. The waiting itself becomes the decision. And time spent waiting is opportunity lost. One myth: you'll be more productive if you wake up at 4 a.m. A Wall Street Journal article in 2016 claimed successful people typically rise at 4 a.m. Logic seems sound. You're awake while others sleep. No distractions. More productive time. But biology doesn't care about logic. Sleep is crucial for functioning. Depriving yourself does more harm than good. Sleep deprivation impairs cognitive performance, decision-making, emotional regulation, immune function, metabolic health. The productivity gained from extra morning hours is lost to diminished performance throughout the day. But ability to use hours productively differs tremendously person to person. Context is everything. Someone working nights to pay for studies during the day doesn't have same ability to be productive as someone born a millionaire thanks to their father's diamond mine. Intelligence makes this myth especially damaging. Smart people think if they just optimized better, they could achieve what successful people achieve. They blame themselves for not unlocking some secret. But success requires resources beyond time and intelligence. Networks, capital, health, stability, luck. They go to pieces quicker during difficult periods. They exhaust easier. Constant happiness is draining. They can be more selfish, more accurate. Productivity benefits from range of emotions. Fear, anger, stress, envy have been shown to make people more productive in various situations. Compelling people to be happy often backfires. Studies reveal if people believe they must be happy, it's harder for them to achieve that. It's like your hobby becoming your job. You stop enjoying it. Toxic positivity. Intelligence lets you analyze your emotions in real time. That analysis interferes with actually experiencing emotions. You're simultaneously in the emotion and observing yourself being in the emotion. That split attention is exhausting. Productivity is impacted not just by time wasted on research. Mental energy drains, self-confidence plummets. The vicious cycle of data collection takes over. Smart people are especially vulnerable because they're capable of deeper analysis. They can research indefinitely. They can always find one more variable to consider, one more study to read, one more expert to consult. The research becomes the work instead of being preparation for the work. When should you stop researching and start doing? There's no perfect answer. But research suggests setting time limits works better than trying to find complete information. Stacy Barr, a performance measure specialist, outlined a 9-step guide to avoid analysis paralysis. First step, formulate the question accurately and clearly. Write it down. Keep it visible. Many people lose the core question in the sea of information. Second, identify what kind of answer you're looking for. Exact number, general direction, rough estimate. Different questions require different research depths. Third, set a research deadline. Fourth, accept that most decisions are reversible. Fifth, embrace good enough. Research from University of Chicago and Korea Business School published in Function Fox in May 2024 found that focusing too heavily on goals correlates with dropping out earlier. Lofty ambitions create pressure. That pressure creates paralysis. Better to aim for adequate progress than perfect achievement. But intelligence makes adequate feel like settling, like wasting potential, like failing to live up to capability. Social isolation compounds the problem. Research published in Neuroscience in October 2024 examined the intelligence paradox. High intelligence can create barriers to forming strong social connections. Many highly intelligent individuals report feeling isolated, struggling to find people who understand them. When you process information differently, communicate differently, value different things, social bonds become harder. And humans are social creatures. We evolved for cooperation. Isolation damages mental health, damages motivation, damages productivity. You're fighting not just task difficulty, but also loneliness. That's a recipe for burnout. You assume you can handle more than you can. You take on too many projects. You underestimate time requirements. You skip necessary preparation. Then you fail. Not from lack of ability, but from overreach. And that failure hits harder because you thought you were too smart to fail that way. The cognitive dissonance damages confidence. Next time you're more cautious, maybe too cautious. The pendulum swings. Research published in Osaka in 2024 examined analysis paralysis in technological decision-making. Their findings? Analysis paralysis stifles risk-taking, prevents open dialogue, constrains innovation, leads to mental exhaustion, reduces concentration, increases stress from endlessly evaluating information. They documented circular discussions. Meetings and discussions characterized by repetition without reaching productive conclusion or action plan. Smart people can argue every side of every issue, so meetings become intellectual exercises rather than decision-making sessions. Everyone feels heard. Nothing gets decided. The appearance of progress without actual progress. Encourage teams to prioritize practical decisions that can be refined over time. This aligns with Agile principles for incremental value delivery and adaptability. But smart people often resist Agile. It feels sloppy. Ship something imperfect? That goes against everything intelligence values. Intelligence prizes correctness, thoroughness, excellence. Agile says ship fast and iterate. Intelligence says wait until it's right. The conflict is philosophical. Clear goals, immediate feedback. And smart people have trouble with the first condition. Their minds generate their own distractions. Even in quiet rooms with no interruptions, thoughts intrude. What ifs, maybes, alternative approaches. The internal monologue never stops. Psychologist Barry Schwartz coined the term paradox of choice. Abundance of options creates difficulty in decision-making, but organizations love options. They want to keep doors open. They want flexibility. They want to avoid commitment. So they delay deciding. They gather more information. They run more pilots. They analyze more data. And productivity stalls. Intelligence amplifies this because smart people can always generate more options to consider. They never run out of possibilities. Feeling permanently frozen in indecision breeds annoyance and irritation, especially if others are waiting for direction. Only 48% of respondents in a McKinsey survey said their organizations make decisions quickly. The other 52% stuck in analysis paralysis. And the smartest organizations often move slowest because they can see the most complications. The more you think about something, the more you limit yourself with restrictions and requirements. Research shows too much overthinking diminishes creativity. Grace Hawthorne and Alan Rees conducted a study measuring students' creativity using MRI scans. During challenging drawings, more activity appeared in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part associated with thinking. During easier, more creative drawings, less prefrontal activity. Creativity requires letting go, trusting intuition, allowing unconscious processing. Intelligence interferes because it insists on conscious control, on understanding why, on justifying choices logically. But creativity doesn't work that way. It emerges from places intelligence can't directly access. Overthinking lowers performance by reducing working memory capacity. Kills creativity, makes you less happy. Struggling with decision-making results from analysis paralysis. The good news? If you recognize analysis paralysis, you can take steps toward fixing it. But recognition requires stepping outside your own thought process. Smart people are often too immersed in their analysis to notice they're paralyzed. They think they're being thorough. They think they're being careful. They think they're being responsible. From inside, paralysis looks like diligence. More maintenance to sustain. Simple solutions feel inadequate to intelligence, like you're not using your full capability. But simple solutions often work better because they're easier to actually do. The implementation gap kills complex plans. Simple plans survive contact with reality. Asset for understanding systems, liability for applying them. Second, deliberately choose simplicity even when complexity feels more intellectually satisfying. Third, set strict limits on research and analysis time. Use timers. When time's up, decide with available information. Fourth, focus on starting over, perfecting. Action generates information that analysis can't access. Fifth, build and rest. 90-minute work sprints with real breaks. Respect ultradian rhythms. Sixth, embrace boredom. Low stimulus activities activate default mode network. That's where insights happen. Good enough is usually good enough. Perfect is rarely necessary. 10th, acknowledge that productivity is contextual. What works for others might not work for you. What worked yesterday might not work today. Stay flexible. Stay experimental. Stay humble about what you actually know versus what you think you know. But understanding doesn't equal implementation. Often understanding interferes with implementation because it reveals all the ways the system might fail. That knowledge creates hesitation. That hesitation creates delay. That delay creates failure, not because the system was wrong, because overthinking prevented giving it a fair chance. The smartest thing you can do with your intelligence isn't to optimize harder. It's to recognize when intelligence is the obstacle and temporarily set it aside to just do the damn work. Efficiency. Today, same paradox appears with generative AI. The pattern holds across technological shifts. Why? Because technology isn't the bottleneck. Human adaptation is. And smart people are particularly bad at adapting because they can see all the ways the adaptation might go wrong. The imbalance exists between horizontal co-pilots and chatbots, which scale quickly but deliver diffuse, hard-to-measure gains and transformative vertical use cases, where about 90% remain stuck in pilot mode. Smart organizations overpilot. They want proof before commitment, but piloting indefinitely prevents ever getting proof. You need full implementation to see real effects. But full implementation feels risky when you can imagine all possible failure modes. And the smartest organizations struggled most because they could articulate more objections more thoroughly. Intelligence becomes institutional analysis paralysis. Early exuberance, hard slog of mastering technology. Then transformation of industries and work. Whether that revolutionary change occurs and how soon depends on real-world testing ground of many businesses. But businesses with the smartest people often test most slowly because they demand more proof before committing. Rest, repeat, no complex systems, no elaborate tracking, no optimization, just consistent action on things that matter. But smart people read this and think it can't possibly be that simple. They look for the hidden complexity, the nuance, the edge case, the exception. And in looking for complexity, they miss the simplicity that actually works. Intelligence wants sophisticated solutions. Productivity requires mundane execution. The gap between them is where smart people get stuck. But underneath the surface, something promising was cooking. Firms that actively encourage chatbot use, offer training, build internal tools, see substantially higher adoption and improved outcomes. Translation? The technology works when humans adapt. But adaptation requires more than just access to tools. It requires changing how you work. Changing how you work means admitting current approach isn't optimal. Intelligence resists that admission. You can explain why your current approach makes sense. You can justify every choice. You can construct elaborate rationale for your workflow. But if it's not producing results, the explanation doesn't matter. Intelligence lets you be wrong in sophisticated ways. Productivity requires being right in simple ways. The choice isn't obvious when you're in it, but the results speak clearly. Developers using AI write more code faster and parallelize more work streams. But AI-augmented code gets bigger and buggier. The bottleneck shifts to review. Output increases, value doesn't. That's not a failure of AI. It's a mismatch between what tools enable and what organizations need. More isn't better, better is better. And intelligence often confuses the two because it can generate more so easily. The discipline isn't in maximizing output. It's in choosing the right output to maximize. That's where productivity advice fails smart people, not in the doing, in the choosing what to do. Suggests reconsidering. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done gets glorified as dedication. The 1987 movie Wall Street proclaimed money never sleeps. Yet economists found this backfires. After employees work a few hours, each subsequent hour becomes less productive. One study found working 70 hours produced the same output as working 55 hours. Those extra hours? Wasted time. Smart people ignore this most. They can push further through exhaustion. Their cognitive reserves run deeper, so they drain them completely. Intelligence provides stamina, but stamina isn't productivity. After the tragic explosion, a presidential commission found the team silenced naysayers and failed to consider important data. The team made worse decisions than individuals would have made alone. Smart people particularly struggle with team dynamics. They see flaws in group decisions. Pointing this out makes you difficult, not a team player. Either suppress insights or damage cohesion. Either choice costs energy not available for productivity. Research examining complexity bias shows smart people look for complex explanations and overlook simple solutions. Intelligence gravitates towards sophistication, but effectiveness often lives in simplicity. Robust systems have fewer moving parts. Intelligence resists this. Simple feels like not using full capacity, but unused horsepower isn't wasted. It's reserved for when needed. The intelligence paradox manifests clearly. High IQ doesn't always translate to real-world success. That kid who aced tests but couldn't tie shoelaces? Intelligence paradox in action. Being book smart doesn't mean life smart. Individual improvements don't translate to aggregate results. A study from University of Copenhagen and Chicago tracking Danish workers in late 2023 found firms that encouraged use, offered training, built tools saw higher adoption and better outcomes. Tools require support systems. Same applies to productivity systems. Can't just read a book and expect transformation. Need adaptation, supporting habits. That takes time. But smart people expect immediate results. When those don't materialize, they move to next system. Next framework. They collect productivity systems without mastering any. Maximizers achieve objectively better outcomes in many cases. Better jobs, better purchases, better deals. But they're less happy with those outcomes because they can always imagine better alternatives. They know they could have researched more, compared more, waited longer. That knowledge poisons satisfaction. Intelligence makes maximizing easier and therefore more tempting and more damaging to well-being. The final synthesis brings us full circle. Productivity advice fails smart people, not because advice is wrong, but because intelligence creates conditions where advice can't work as designed. The advice assumes certain constraints: limited ability to see alternatives, limited capacity to generate complexity, limited tendency to overthink. Smart people violate all these assumptions. They see too many alternatives, generate too much complexity, overthink everything. The advice can't account for this because it's designed for average case, not edge case. And intelligence, by definition, is edge case. Your capacity for analysis is exactly what's crippling you. Your intelligence is the obstacle, not the solution. This advice sounds insulting. It sounds like you should make yourself stupider. That's not it. It's about recognizing when to deploy intelligence and when to bypass it. Strategy versus execution. Intelligence for strategy. Discipline for execution. Smart people try to use intelligence for both. That's the error. Execution doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards consistency, showing up, doing the work even when you don't feel like it, even when you can think of better approaches, even when you're bored, even when it seems pointless. Intelligence interferes with this because it generates reasons not to do the boring work. It creates apparently illogical justifications for procrastination. It makes delay seem rational. And from inside your head, those justifications are compelling. That's why external systems help. Deadlines imposed by others, accountability partners, public commitments. These create forcing functions that override internal rationalization. Your intelligence can argue with itself endlessly. It can't argue with external deadline. Intelligence is double-edged sword for productivity. Advantage for understanding, disadvantage for implementing. The smartest people often struggle most with basic execution, not despite intelligence, but because of it. The solution isn't more optimization, it's less. The solution isn't better systems, it's simpler ones. The solution isn't understanding more, it's accepting less. That acceptance runs counter to everything intelligence values. But it's also path to actual sustained productivity, not optimal productivity, not maximum productivity, just consistent, adequate productivity. And over a long timeline, consistent, adequate beats sporadic, optimal every single time. That's what the data shows. That's what the science says. That's the truth smart people least want to hear.